Welcome to this episode of The Chiefs. I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez.
I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan.
And tonight we will talk about China's new map and the West Philippine Sea. Ayan na, ang tanong ko, what does a cartographer do? Can he actually deliberately change?
Mag-hire
Or was
din
this
tayo.
Oo nga.
Mag-hire din ang Pilipinas ng sariling kartographer
Okay.
at gagawa din tayo ng 15
Sarili nating
dash
dash line.
So, to that point, I think historically ang ginagawa ng cartographer ay pinagugulo yung buong mundo. I'm sure many wars have been waged. Many misunderstandings
Kayang-kaya ng graphics artist natin
have
yan,
been born. No? Actually, ngayon, infographics editor ang tawag sa...
Kaya lang, ang impact niyan yan ang problema.
Yes. And really, no kidding. I mean, they added Taiwan. What's
Yeah.
new about that?
They've always claimed Taiwan.
Exactly, diba? So why are we surprised? Should we even be alarmed by this?
Pero ang lapit-lapit na dun sa Palawan, nakita niya, malapit na sa
Sobra.
beaches yun ng El Nido, no?
Correct.
At saka yung 9 dash line lang, naghihimutok
Doon pa lang
na.
galit na tayo
Dinagdagan
eh.
pa ng isa pang dash.
But when you think about it, it began as an 11-dash line. It was an 11-dash line in 1947
Chiang
with
Kai-shek.
Chiang Kai-shek.
Yeah.
Yes.
They published the first map in 1947 December
So-
under the Republic of China under Chiang Kai-shek before they got overthrown by Mao.
So who changed it to 9? Mao?
Then it became 10-dash line and then 9-dash line and back to 10. So
Kaya nga gagawa din tayo sarili natin map.
Teka, anong isasama mo? If we were to make our own dash line,
Hindi
and
tayo naman sumusunod tayo sa UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. 200-mile exclusive economic zone. Hanggang doon lang tayo sa ayungin.
oh, di ba? So mabait tayo. In other words, the 200-mile will only include what? Just 3 siguro out of the 9 dash, ano?
Saka yung mischief na okupado ngayon ng ibang tao, kailangan makabalik sa atin yan. Yung Panganiban Reef.
Pero ang punto naman dito is alam natin that there's no such thing as a small thing when it comes to these things. Diba? Parang just adding or removing one line or bringing it back.
Yeah.
Beijing knows
Right.
that people will be reading into that.
Tsaka yung
and it can have
timing
your movie banned.
No. Oo.
Dalawang pelikula na yun, di ba?
Natuloy naman si
Dabinan,
Bar.
ano, dahil nga.
Natuloy
Hindi,
naman
tsaka
si
yung
Bar.
timing eh. Just when we were really trying to fight it out, di ba? Kakaganap lang ng water cannon incident.
Pero tayo, we're
Tapos
trying...
gagatungan nila ng 10 dash,
Yeah,
di ba?
we're trying to interpret lines on the side of Beijing, but we also need to be interpreting yung mga linya rin natin coming from us. For example, when the government says, it's time to push back.
Oo.
Anong ibig sabihin ng linya na yan?
Right.
Di ba? Because for the longest time, people have been saying exactly the same thing.
Yes.
But what does it mean now?
It's not a new thing. What kind of pushback are we going to be doing this time? And we will get that from no less than the Philippine Ambassador to the United States, who will be our guest tonight. So that's something to watch out for. Keep it there. We will be bringing him in after this break.
pangangkin ng hindi kanila. Ang dating 9-dash line sa South China Sea, ginawa pang 10-dash line.
The Foreign Affairs Department has rejected China's publication of a new map that included parts of the West Philippine Sea.
No matter kung ano pang mapa ilabas nila, it will not invalidate, no? Because the decision of the Permanent Court of Arbitration is final and binding to all nations.
China is telling, no matter what the world would say, no matter whatever reaction you have, we are standing by our expansive claims. This is an indication that it will be a long game.
And welcome back to the Chiefs. Our guest tonight, Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Babe Romualdez, here in the studio with us. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for
Evening,
inviting me.
Ambassador.
Good evening
Good
po.
evening to all of you. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's good to see all of you
Thank
in
you
person.
for being here. It's good to see you too.
Yes.
But you're coming at a time when China is really being very aggressive on all fronts, and I'm not just talking about water cannons. I'm talking about this new map, which everybody else is reacting to. What's yours?
Well, obviously, I've always said that China has never wavered in their pursuit of the 9-dash line. Now it's 10, and I think
to their
it might
credit,
even
huh?
be expanded for another 11, 12, or whatever. But, we're really facing a lot of challenges, and this challenge that we're facing right now is a very serious one because I've always believed that even from as far back in the mid-90s, China's plans in the West Philippine Sea or the South China Sea has always been to expand their. Originally, it was influence, but when we saw what was happening in the Scarborough Shoal, that was really a red flag for us. And I can say that the arbitral award has definitely given us a lot of leverage in the international community, which is very important for us right now. And while we have the international community with us, this is an opportunity for us to really push back on what China is doing.
But we have had that since 2016, but we
Yes.
haven't really moved forward as far as this international support is concerned because China remains unfazed and unaffected and even digging in their heels.
Well, yes, that's true. But at the same time, we have to use all kinds of peaceful means. Peaceful means, I can say that it's diplomatic ways by using the arbitral award. What President Marcos has done was made it clear that we are not going to give 1 inch of our territory, which basically is showing to our neighbors to the north that we are not going to budge on the arbitral award. That one, I think, is going to be, and that's the reason why the international community, we have over 100 countries that are now supporting us on this one. It's being recognized by the other claimants, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. And now that this 10-dash line, we have more people joining us. In other words, hindi na tayo nag-iisa.
But sir, haven't we used all peaceful means already? I mean, I'm not talking for non-peaceful means, but since 2016, we've been pushing and pushing the diplomatic front, the public front, and all that. What else is there
What
to
other
do?
recourse is there that's peaceful?
I think that is precisely why we have now stepped up our relationship with our old ally, the United States. This is where we have been very clear that it's part of our defense strategy. The United States has been offering, in many ways, especially during the time of President Trump, that their support of us is ironclad. Of course, there were a lot of doubts at that time, but now it's very clear that it's aligned with their interests, that we push back. And so I think what we're doing right now is the right thing, which is now to, I know it may have been a little bit controversial to some people on the EDCA sites, the new EDCA sites, but that's a signal that we're pushing back. And I've always said that if we're going to sit down with our neighbors to the north, the Chinese, we have to talk to them from a position of strength.
Now,
People are saying, we are talking about pushing back. But China is not being pushed back. Yun ang nakikita ng mga tao, di ba? They continue to build islands. They continue to destroy the reefs. They continue to expand. They're building military facilities on their artificial islands. They refuse to leave from all these areas that were declared as ours.
Yes.
No, as our sovereign, where we have sovereign rights. No?
That's
So
right.
maybe you can give us an
naging
idea
aggressive
exactly
pa
of
nga eh.
what is possible for a pushback? Kasi hindi na sinasabi ng iba, wala naman nangyari. Nobody stopped China from doing all these things. And they're treating the arbitral award as nothing but a piece of paper. What might be possible?
Well, right now, I'm sure you know, we're now talking to three other countries on the joint patrol.
Yep.
That is one aspect of our pushing back. We're now making it very clear that we are going to start moving in the direction of being able to patrol our territorial rights in the area. That's one. But the more important one is, even if whoever continues to say that we are veering towards the West, particularly the United States, the fact of the matter is that this is recognized by over 100 countries, and perhaps even more today with this 10-dash line. People that were not supporting this arbitral award are now, countries. So that is pushing back. I think we are miscalculating what the Chinese are thinking, but the way we see it, at least from where we sit in Washington, D.C., the Chinese are also going to start thinking twice about all of these moves that they're making. They may seem like they're pushing, but they know that there are so many other countries. One of the things that we have to also bring to the table is our ASEAN neighbors.
Yes.
Many of our ASEAN neighbors are very important, and I think President Marcos has made it clear that he wants as many other countries as possible to get together and find a way to be able to push back, at the same time telling China, let's sit down and talk.
Could I just make that explicit, also just to confirm if we got the context right? When we say, and I think that's been the early context in her questions, diba? Pushback, what does it mean? One is assertion of the arbitral ruling, building the international network of communities that are backing this. That's clearly part of the pushback. But the other thing that you said was we have stepped up our relationship with the United States. This is something a little bit more explicit, if I'm not mistaken, that stepping up the relationship with the United States is in fact part of the pushback.
Absolutely. Not only with the United States, we're also having the same kind of agreements with Australia, for instance. Japan is also coming into the picture. We have South Korea. We have also other countries as well from the European Union has clearly said that they are prepared to support us in this endeavor. So I think that that kind of reaction from the international community is enough to show that we are indeed going in the direction of pushing back, but at the same time we're finding ways and means to be able to communicate to our Chinese friends that we want to sit down and seriously really discuss this in a mature way.
Yeah, but the communication part has always been a given. In what other forms? We're not talking about bringing in other partners, allies, people who will champion this message as well. But what other forms might a pushback take?
Well, we have now our Philippine Coast Guard. As you know, they're actively now moving in that direction. We're buying more, or we're getting more, but we're getting more of this Coast Guard cutters that we're getting from other countries. Japan is also supporting us in that. So all that is part and parcel. But we definitely, I don't think China or any other country wants a really major conflict. We know that a major conflict means the end of the world. Let's be very straightforward about it.
Yes, and that's the greatest fear, that once again we're going to be pawns in a war between, two giants, that in fact by pushing back in terms of our alliance with the United States, we're actually inviting an escalation toward a non-peaceful solution.
Well, I think that's I totally disagree with that, because we are right in the center of all of this. We have the unfortunate situation where we are geographically right in the center of where this flashpoint can be. And what are we going to do? No matter how much we try to say that we want to remain neutral or we want to stay away from this, we will get involved. We will be involved in any kind of conflict. As a matter of fact, even other countries outside of the area, like Singapore and all of this, it's very clear. Anything that happens in this part of the world, everyone will be affected.
So it's inevitable, whether or not we you know, we
So it's
step
either
up our
yes.
partnership with the U.S.
What are we going to do? Are we just going to sit back and say, all right, we won't do anything, we're not going to do any of our military alliance, whatever it is, and just let it be? It's like we're a sitting duck. At least we're making a move to try and make it clear that we are going to defend our territorial.
But that's in the context of our territory. What if the flashpoint is Taiwan?
Well, the flashpoint, actually, there are many people who are telling us that the real flashpoint is going to be the South China Sea. Because Taiwan, it's clear, the Chinese believe that it's part of their. So
We say so with our own policy.
there are some countries that actually support that.
Yeah.
It is, if really we can say that is your concern, it's
Yes,
not
that's your
ours,
problem.
that's fine.
Yes.
But that's not the case. You see, we are being included because they are claiming what is ours. And you know, what's important here, you have to remember that this is part of our food security. Our fishermen have not been able to fish the way they have always been doing this for hundreds of years. That's one. The environment, the destruction of the environment is also there. And now, more importantly, the energy, the gas and oil that is available, which is ours. I don't think the Filipino people would say, okay, well, let's just keep quiet and, you know, we'll find way, hopefully things will work out. It can't be that way. It
So
cannot.
let me say with Taiwan. But the thing is that it was also Taiwan. Taiwan is also claiming what is ours. It's not doing it as aggressively as
Well,
China, because to begin with, that
That's
dash
true.
line began with the claim of Chiang Kai-shek in 1947, and Taiwan still holds on to the 11 dash line until now.
Well, that's true. But,
So for all intents and purposes,
but
they're-
President Marcos Sr. actually declared that the South China Sea, which we're claiming, is ours. It started also as far back as that in the late 1960s. You see, so the bottom line is, we now have an arbitral award which is legally binding as far as all nations that signed up on the UNCLOS, and that is the document that we're using as a basis for our claims. Other countries who are also claiming have all now recognized that. To a certain extent, I don't want to say it's a blessing in disguise, but it could be that China's pushing back or pushing towards our area now is getting more people or more of the other countries to support this. So that's where we are today,
Yes,
which
sir.
is good.
Yes, sir. Well, what I'm saying is that it's by a quirk of history that we're now up against China when, if history turned a little bit the other way, we'd be up against Taiwan. I say that because, yes, now we have problems with China, but maybe sooner or later we'll also have to confront the issue of Taiwan claiming what is also ours.
Well, China, Taiwan is not water cannoning or
That's true.
they're not doing any of these things. No, right now it's as a matter of fact, I understand that there's been some form of cooperation even in that part of our territorial waters with Taiwan. Vietnam is doing the same thing with us now. Indonesia is doing the same thing with us. So we're
So
all
they're
in this
not
together.
as aggressive. Yes.
Exactly.
But okay, so how much of China's aggression now has to do with a shift in foreign policy under President Bongbong Marcos? The fact that during Duterte's time, we had, much friendlier relations with them. And when President Marcos took over, the shift was very clear and very obvious. It's now more U.S. aligned rather than China. While he has not said, of course, that we're going to cut ties with China at all, it's very clear that he has also pivoted toward the U.S., which may have been some sort of a threat toward China.
Well, it may seem that way, but I've always said that President Duterte, former President Duterte, had his own brand of foreign policy at that time. Remember that during the time of President Noynoy Aquino, especially after we filed that arbitral award, there was no high-level meeting with China. If you remember, that's what happened. And then we sent,
Yes.
I think President Aquino sent Senator Trillanes for backdoor negotiations, which nothing happened. So, what President Marcos is saying which is exactly what it is now, is an evolving relationship with not only with the United States, but other countries as well, including China. President Duterte tried to reach out to China. He said we could find ways and means in a peaceful way. He did it in a manner that may seem that we were weakening our position, but technically no. He was trying to find a way to be able to tell China that we can work on this. In fact, former Secretary Teodoro Locsin and I have been discussing this extensively on the joint exploration,
Yes.
which nothing happened.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
do you think it worked, Duterte's approach? Because
Exactly,
during his 6 years, China continued island building. They sent all those swarms of over 200 ships stopping our fishermen from fishing.
Well, I think there was some hope, a glimmer of hope that they were going to stop.
Yeah.
And in fact, we had an agreement that nothing will happen to our Ayungin Shoal. That was the agreement then. That everything was no movement, no nothing. But obviously that didn't work.
Yeah, our fishing boat was sunk.
Yes.
And they abandoned the fishermen.
Yeah.
The Vietnamese were the ones who
Were the ones who
our
picked them up.
fishermen.
Yes, I remember that very well. So, well, anyway, the bottom line is now it's a different situation we're in right now. And President Marcos has always clearly said it is an evolving relationship that we have with our number one ally, the United States. And it has come to this, that it is our interest now to strengthen our relationship with the United States, especially our defense strategy. Our defense strategy is very important, and the mix of having not only the United States but other countries as well, like-minded countries like Australia, Japan, South Korea, and all of these other countries that are prepared to be with us in this situation that we face.
Mr. Ambassador, I understand that, in the world of diplomacy and foreign affairs, it's difficult to say whether one position is right or wrong. You frame the Duterte administration's approach as basically something that didn't work, but without necessarily pushing you to say, but was it wrong? Let me just ask it this way. It didn't work, but did it actually, was it in fact also damaging? And was it in fact destructive in certain angles rather than constructive?
Well, it's very hard to say that. For me, personally, I feel that it was a good try for us to approach China in such a way that we wanted to sit down and say, let's work together, especially on the exploration, which is very important for us. So, to a certain extent, it worked, President Duterte's approach, because the high-level meetings took place. So there was a glimmer of that hope that things will get better. But I guess history will have to be the judge. Things didn't get any better.
But sir, when the president appointed the former president to be the special envoy to China, especially after his recent visit to China with Xi Jinping, do you think that was a good move?
No, I don't think he appointed. He offered to appoint him. That's the understanding I have, and President Duterte declined it. He said that his time is over.
But what do you think about that visit?
Well, it's very hard. If the conversation with President Xi was substantial, then it would have been a good visit. Unfortunately, I'm not privy to the conversations. This was reported by President Duterte to President Marcos, exactly what happened during that visit that the former president had.
But do you think that was a no harm, no foul thing?
There's no harm in talking. Like I said, the consequence of not talking and just being pushing and looking for conflict, that is a disaster that it's unimaginable. I think everyone knows how serious the situation we face. All countries, no matter how big they are, even China and the United States, they're finding ways and means to be able to go into the middle ground because they know what the consequence is. We don't have much say on that big play, but we do have a say in our territory. And certainly we don't want to lose our territory, but we also don't want to go out there and push our allies into go ahead and start, because it's going to be disastrous for everyone.
Well, it's also noteworthy that after the visit, our ships were blasted
That's
with the
when
water
it happened.
cannon. Okay, just mention.
Whatever you have to say about that? I mean, it's hard to confirm.
Well,
But yeah, it just makes the discussion all the more interesting. That's why you should stay where you are. We will continue this after this breather. Keep it here on the Chiefs.
The Philippines is set to conduct the joint patrol operations with the United States in the West Philippine Sea.
Maraming Pinoy ang sang-ayon sa pagpapalakas ng ugnayan ng Pilipinas at Amerika para tugunan ang issue sa West Philippine Sea.
Reuters reported that discussions are happening within the U.S. military regarding the establishment of a civilian port in Batanes.
I was able to meet with the governor in my office at the embassy in Manila just a couple of months ago, and she laid out a list of development projects that might be of interest to USAID. We're looking at a number of things, but in terms of a specific level of port, that's still to be determined.
And welcome back. We're still with the Philippine Ambassador to the U.S., Babe Romualdez, and we're talking about China, the Philippines in the middle, and the United States. Okay, U.S. elections are coming up, and there might soon be a new president. We don't know. Do you foresee a shift also on their part in regard to China and the relationship with us?
I don't see it because right now in Washington, D.C., there is no question that there is a bipartisan agreement as far as dealing with China. So we can take comfort in the fact that even if there's a change in the administration in Washington, D.C., you can be sure that either party will have the same kind of policy towards China, where we are today. So of course, there'll be new players, meaning Republicans if the Republicans win, but they have the same. They have the same concern. They have the same policy that they want to pursue towards what they see China as a threat to the United States.
Yeah, but again, the expression is what people are intrigued by and trying to decipher. Because that posturing has always been there, even from the time of Barack Obama saying that we will pivot to Asia, and nothing really came of that until the next administration.
Well, I think sad to say, President Obama had the policy. The policy then was we do not get involved with territorial disputes. We were like the little boy crying wolf, and nobody believed us until we wake up one day. An official dismissed it as just rocks. Those rocks are now military bases.
What do you say to the fact that people know that this is really all about U.S. and China, and it's about domination, and the United States especially needs to continue to dominate this area of the globe. That in effect, it's really still their interest, and we're the ones who are convenient to use for their ends.
Well, it may seem that way, but that's the reason why we have a very strong relationship, or we are building our relationship with the other ASEAN countries as a bloc. We're 10 nations. We may end up with about 11 sometime soon. And so, as a bloc, the ASEAN nation, and in Washington, D.C., we are a force in Washington, D.C. All 10 ambassadors have always had regular meetings with the White House. It's very important for the United States. So that gives you an indication that it's not just as if we're opening our arms and do what you want. We want to fight, we are pushing back in any kind of dominance in our area. We want to be able to...
Since you mentioned ASEAN, I think one of the strengths of China in this region is that it has been able to divide and not rule, but to divide and prevent a common consensus coming up with regard to all these tensions in the South China Sea. And President Marcos is going to attend the ASEAN summit. What do you think might be achieved? Because we've been talking for over a decade about a code of conduct, and now people are wondering the code of conduct might actually just legitimize the status quo where China dominates.
The code of conduct is really more, it's like to be able to find a way to allow the free flow of it's more on the trade part of it, and certainly China has to be a part of that. But the ASEAN as a whole realized that we have to, you see, we rule by consensus. So in other words, if one country disagrees, then everything. That's the reason why it's been, we're now going on our third decade, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's really something that, because it's very contentious, so it's not as if it's something that we can just sit down at the table. There are a lot of details that have to be, and China obviously is using that card to divide and conquer. But at the end of the day, I think when there is a very strong threat of dominance by any one country, all ASEAN countries will
China is using economic pressure, economic clout to influence regional affairs. Is there any discussion among with our allies on similar approaches to get China to behave in a certain way?
Well, we have definitely, number one in the policy of the president is economic security. Economic securities are number one. We do not want to be coerced because of our... So we're expanding our economy. I'm very confident that our move towards strengthening our relationship with the United States will bring us more investments coming from the country. As a matter of fact, we're one of the few countries that the United States is looking at pushing some of the CHIEFS Act. If you remember, this is a 60 to 80 billion dollar business. That's most of this are in Taiwan, and a lot of it is also in China, and they're now trying to diversify it to the ASEAN region. The Philippines is in the priority list.
But
with this type of-
Mr. Ambassador, still on Ami's point, I can completely believe you that when the ASEAN members face Washington, they have a united stance. It's having a united message to China that things fall apart. I'm wondering whether or not because some people have said this also, whether the wiser route is not necessarily ASEAN, but simply the claimant countries within ASEAN.
No, I think, all ASEAN countries have one thing in common. We would like to be able to develop our economies. I think that's number one. The security issue, of course, is just as important, but it takes precedence. What takes precedence is the economic situation of our. The United States and other countries are now trying to find ways and means to be able to get all the ASEAN countries as part of their push to have more economic activity between the ASEAN as a whole and the United States and Europe and others. So that's number one.
In fact, that's what the Australian ambassador, we had her as guest recently, and that's what she said, that Australia, after experiencing economic coercion by China, they began diversifying. They began weaning themselves away from these exchanges with China.
Exactly.
So are we having this kind of discussion?
Oh yes, definitely. We're looking for markets that may be vulnerable to Chinese coercion. We don't want the same thing to happen to us in the past, where our bananas were just burned because of the conflict that we had with them on the arbitral award.
So there are Filipinos who subscribe to the idea that we're being part of an effort by the United States and Western powers to contain the growing economic power of China. There's that argument that's gained some following in the Philippines, and that's why you have Filipinos who are apparently sympathetic to China, feeling that it's China that's just on the defensive.
I think that's a misnomer, because I think in the first place, China is where it is today because of the United States. That's clear. The economic prosperity of China, their biggest market, is the United States. There are many who are saying that China will eventually fold up into this type of behavior because they will need the United States. Perhaps vice versa. The United States also looks at China as a big market. Yes. But I don't think it's safe to say that, or it's wrong to say that that one country, especially the United States, is trying to stop China. What they are arguing about is the imbalance of trade. They joined the WTO, but they're not following the rules. The intellectual property rights is one big contention that they have with China. These are things related to the economy of both countries. But at the end of the day, that is what's going to make them sit down and really realize, especially as Ami pointed out, Chinese economy is not doing very well now.
Yep. What do you have to say about this PRP Sierra Madre? That, as a matter of fact, we deliberately ran it aground. That at some point China had requested of us to remove it, but and we did commit to removing it, but never did. And so now they have every right to do what they're doing. Every time, resupply missions are sent over there.
Well,
how is the president, as far as you know, taking this, and as well the United States?
well, no, that's what we call disinformation. So there's a lot
you've
of
talked about cyber
definitely.
security.
That actually,
in
to
one
be
of your
honest about it,
articles. Yes.
to be honest about it, I'm extremely worried about cybersecurity, because that is something that has not been really discussed as much, but that is really where we're vulnerable. Right now, clearly, at least from the intelligence information that we received, is that almost all our institutions have been compromised, severely compromised. Our telcos have been severely compromised. So it's like at the flick of a switch, they can just turn off everything. And what is really is the new technology, as you can see with what's happening in Ukraine, sending the drones inside Russia is new technology, which is that's cybersecurity right there. And if they send 10 or 100 or 1,000 of these things, and 1 or 2 could be lethal, then you have a big disaster that can happen here.
You said
they are cybersecurity experts in the Philippines who are saying, well, they are citing what the U.S. has done. You know, the U.S. government stopped all their government employees from using TikTok in the office, right? And I think some other countries are doing the same. And in our country, in our case, there are these experts who are saying we should even stop using Zoom for sensitive government discussions. You think, are we having this kind of discussion within the government?
Yes, definitely. As a matter of fact, there are some experts. I'm not sure whether they're here already, but they're supposed to be coming in any time, and to be able to assess the cyber situation that we have right now.
But why do you raise this in, as an answer to my question about the RP Sierra Madre?
Well,
do you think that there was disinformation involved there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. This information is very clear. We never had any kind of agreement that we were going to remove that. There was none. There's no document. And there are documents that are obviously doctored. This is what I'm saying. They can actually send a message coming from your phone
and make it look
like it came from you.
Yeah, but you also mentioned cyber warfare. You said you are, in fact, of course, very concerned about this. I just want to be very more direct about this. Are you concerned for this as a hypothetical, or are you in fact saying that cyber battles, cyber warfare are in fact already ongoing? It is already, we already have incidents of it. Is it state-sponsored? Are we saying this in fact in the context of China?
Well,
and it's not just China, to be fair. I'm sure the United States has its share of.
Well, all countries have their share of cybersecurity. There is a technology called Pegasus, which was developed by Israel. If you have the money, you can buy this, but they can actually tap into your phone using this type of technology. It's very expensive, but you can do it. And there are countries who have access to that type of technology. Some say that there is technology that's being used here in the Philippines.
Well, you mentioned experts who will be coming here. They will be coming from where?
Well, the United States has offered, we took it up. President Marcos had mentioned it during his trip that cybersecurity was a major concern. So there are some experts that are coming here to help us assess the situation.
Within the month, or?
Yes,
within the year?
Within this year. We are continuing. See, Secretary Ivan Uy is on top of this, and we are doing it by phases, I think. That is the understanding I have. But definitely we have to really seriously look at this as a potential, I wouldn't say as bad as what's happening in the West Philippine Sea, but quite closely.
So they will determine our vulnerability of the government?
No, they will determine how far this, our cybersecurity has been compromised, and to be able to find ways and means to be able to block that, or to technology that would be able to sort of like push and stop this
pushback as well.
Another one.
It's not even possible in the realm. I mean, it's not even possible in the realm, because it seems to me like in the digital realm, anything is possible. So if somebody comes up with, a system that will push back, there will be another way to do it.
That's what the technology is all about. There's always a continuing.
Yeah, but that's right. I mean, I apologize. I really have to. I really just want to push that question. I wasn't asking about cybersecurity, as you said, that everybody is subject to cybersecurity breaches. I'm talking about cyber warfare. I mean, do we have,
What is
in
it?
fact,
What is it
Yeah,
exactly?
cyber warfare in the context of state to state, in the context of another state targeting the Philippines. Do we have indications that there are, in fact, already state-sponsored incursions into our cyberspace?
Well, it happened in the United States. Russia was the main suspect. Well, they were able to turn off the power of a certain area in the west and the southwestern part of the United States. That is cybersecurity right there. And here's the fearsome thing that can actually happen. If our cybersecurity is breached, for instance, with our airports, they can actually direct an aircraft.
Blackout the airport.
They can actually direct an aircraft.
What was that? Yeah, I wonder, because we experienced that twice this year, right? First one in January and a more recent one.
But was that cybersecurity
that
related, or was
cybersecurity?
it simple
No,
negligence?
what I'm talking about is that the IFR of the aircraft.
Kaya siya hindi mahahack kasi blackout.
Power.
Oh, yeah, walang signal.
There are advantages even to.
No, go on.
Sorry about that.
No, what is fearsome for some of those that are looking at cybersecurity as something that we should be worried about is that they can actually now, many aircraft, especially in bad weather, they depend entirely on the IFR, the instrument. They can actually hack into that one and direct the airport to actually not land but crash into an area where highly populated. That's very possible.
Right. And that's.
So that is cybersecurity right
And
there.
financial, right? They can attack our financial
Yes,
system.
they can cripple us completely.
That's true. Well, thankfully, we're not yet there.
Sir,
And
one more,
won't
if I may. We've made great strides in modernizing the armed forces. What's it look like in the next few years as far as U.S. cooperation in modernizing the AFP is concerned?
We definitely are on the right track. I think, and luckily, whether it was President Duterte's time or not, we've had more assistance coming from the United States with our armed forces. As I think the last figure that we tallied was about something like close to 700 million. And we're hoping to get more of this type of hardware that we need for our armed forces to be at that level where it is a, what do you call that?
Credible
credible defense, which the United States is helping us. But more than that is that there are also other countries that are coming and stepping up as part of this whole program. Japan, of course, is one major. In fact, when I saw the Japanese ambassador in Washington, D.C., he was telling me that they were going to be offering more on the security side for us to be able to either part of their program, they will finance it, or it will be given to us.
Well, for example, sir, like F-16s, they're shifting to the F-35s already, so the F-16s are basically...
The F-16s, the problem with the F-16s, while our Air Force really wants to have that aircraft, it's a very expensive one. With the kind of budget we have for a brand new F-16, just a brand new one, we can probably buy maybe 2 or 3. But when Senate President Bing Subiri was in Washington, D.C., we brought him, of course, to some of our friends in the Pentagon, and they told him that our laws are any modernization, it has to be brand new. Brand new is just too expensive for us. There is one block of F-16s that are available from, I think, from Denmark, which is because Denmark is switching to the F-35. Right. So these are still in all, well, you wouldn't even want to say.
Pre-loved.
Well, sana ganun. But, we can get as many as 12 to even 16 of these
For the price of the 3, that are brand new.
something like that.
But we will need to tweak the law.
Yes.
We need to change the law. That's why I was very pleased that Senator Subiri was there. He heard it for himself. So he's doing something about the procurement law that we have.
Great. Maybe next time when we have you here, we will have 7 pre-loved F-16's here. No, I hope that it's not going to be that far away from now. But thank you so much,
Thank
US
you, too.
Ambassador.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you, too.
Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Babe ROMUALDEZ. Maraming salamat.
Thank you, too.
Well, there you go. I think it's going to be status quo for a long time to come unless some war, cyber, or otherwise breaks out.
May pushback sa South China Sea. May pushback sa cybersecurity. Ayan,
Parang,
tingnan
we've been
natin.
on pushback mode naman for like a long time
Ayan na nga.
Except during the time of President Duterte, I think we weren't pushing back against China. But then again,
Pero ngayon, meron na tayong joint, sa tingin ko yun ang new. Meron magkakaroon ng joint patrols. Kasi yun naman ang,
Yeah, yun lang.
di ba, yan ang ano ng China eh. Kapag pinigilan mo talaga physically, tumitigil naman, di ba?
But I do think there's something na, for me, that means something when the ambassador says that, no, our relationship with the United States and ramping up that relationship is in fact part of the pushback.
Yeah.
Because they've been treading this line for the longest time, that even with EDCA, even with this warmer relationship with the United States, hiwala yun dun sa China. But now, it's much more, well, not much
no,
more.
I think
but
there's just more explicit about it, Robbie. But it's always been
exactly,
there.
like I said. But that's why
Yeah.
we're trying to read tea leaves and every little thing, di ba? And even with any change, we're trying to see meron bang nagbabago sa isip na.
But even if you do joint patrols, how much of a pushback is that? Kasi all China has to do is avoid the joint patrols. It's
at
a
least-
huge sea.
At least makakarating na sa ayungin ng matahimik yung
Tsaka yung mga
matiwas pa
fishermen,
yung mga
ako parang
ships
feeling ko, yun
natin.
na
But
lang. That's
but
the best
would the
you can
joint
do,
patrols
diba?
be escorting fishermen? They won't. They won't. I don't think
No,
it's
they
going to be
will not be
joint-
escorting.
They're
Yeah,
not
but their
escorting.
presence there,
watching the border,
diba,
yeah.
can also somehow deter the ships from.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a huge
deterrence
sea.
lang eh. I think
Pero avoidance
that's the
eh.
best we can do for now, diba?
But, but going back to my question kanina in the end, everybody wants to avoid a war, which is good, which is right. But I think that China's also playing on that idea that nobody wants to go that far. So it can push and push and push.
Because to
and
that-
we'll just
Because to that
Salag na
point,
salag.
without going to war, gaya nga nasabi ni Ambassador, rocks were turned into military bases.
That's
true. Diba? And all, parang, okay, nobody wants to go to war. But that's been going on for decades, and China has, in fact, encroached
and they've
built
gained territory without ever going to war.
without going to war.
Parang red herring lang yun eh, no? Parang while everybody's looking at the ships and, the water cannoning, they're building something over
Yan
here
nga.
quietly.
So at least kahit kung may umiikot-ikot doon ng mga barko ng, it's a quad, no?
Yeah.
That's quite
Quad.
important. And in fact, I heard
Malaking
na
bagay yung quad.
even
Yeah.
India is thinking of joining activities in this region because they are also affected by.
But my other question is this: now we're more or less in league with Taiwan, although not officially because we have on China policy. But with EDCA and all that, parang we're there for Taiwan's benefit in a way. But in the end, when you look at it, Taiwan's also claiming
Kalaban din.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're not
there's
aggressive.
they're not
yet.
aggressive.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're not
that's
aggressive.
We're in
But
dispute
in
with
the end,
them. We're
it
also
could
in
be.
dispute with Vietnam.
Yeah.
With Brunei, I mean, di ba, claimants naman lahat.
Hindi, inaano lang naman
Co-claimant.
natin, yes.
But we respect each other's claims and there's no aggression. I think
Yes.
yun yung important.
Because I can't
They are
afford to
not
do that now.
stopping our fishermen. They're not
Yeah,
stopping
they're
our
not
fishermen from
stopping.
fishing.
Right.
They're not destroying the coral reefs and building artificial islands.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference, I
At
think.
least for now. At least
No?
for now. Well, we hope that it doesn't step up with a pushback.
And the other thing that's I think significant is the possibility of amending the law on modernization of the
Yeah.
AFPs. Instead of going
Bakit
for
brand
brand
new
new all the
lang?
time, a lot of countries are going for second
Para
hand.
dumami. Bakit?
And when you think about it, I mean, how many F-16s is Ukraine getting for free
Oo nga eh.
from NATO?
Yeah. It's true.
Pero ano naman, actual war naman yan.
Yeah.
We've been actual allies for the longest time.
Talaga nagkakamatayan na doon. Marami-rami na namatay doon. Ano.
Kasi wala tayong oil eh. Okay.
Anyway,
Ayan pa.
ang ibig sabihin lang, tuloy pa rin ang tuloy pa rin ang usapan. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us. But before we go, we would like to thank the People Management Association of the Philippines, or PMAP, for recognizing the Chiefs in this year's Macatao Awards for Media Excellence. We won the Best TV Public Affairs Program hosts. And last year, we were Best Public Affairs Program, which is also to say we share this with all our producers, our writers, our researchers, the cameramen, and of course, our network. Maraming salamat, and to all of you, maraming salamat po.
Congrats to us.
And that's all we have for the Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
We hope what was discussed will keep the conversation going. I'm Ami Pamintuan.
We will see you again next week. I'm Ed Lingao.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez. We are One News, all sides, all the time.